All right, everybody, the next topic that we're going to cover in our World War II unit is Japanese internment. This is coming almost less than 2 months after the bombing of Pearl Harbor. So our learning outcome, you should be able to understand and describe how and why Japanese Americans were relocated and the impact that it had on their lives. So, again, we're talking about after Pearl Harbor. This is nothing new. There are pre-existing racial tensions dating back really to the turn of the century, not just with the Japanese, but also with the Chinese. We have the Gentleman's Agreement and then also the Chinese Exclusion Act, which restricts both of their immigration pretty significantly. And this is going to go on through World War II and even into the 1950s. It's still not until 1952 before Japanese people can even get American citizenship and become naturalized citizens. So it's, like I said, existed for several decades. Now, after Pearl Harbor, there is a constant fear that every person of Japanese descent is going to sabotage or be a spy and be sending information back to the emperor. So the idea was to intern 1% of Japanese Americans in Hawaii. They wanted to intern all people of Japanese descent in Hawaii, but that's close to 40% of their population and would completely cripple the economy. So they settled with 1% of Japanese Americans in Hawaii, which still most of the people living in Japan are living in Hawaii are of Japanese descent. Now, the common misconception is that it is only Japanese people that get interned or get relocated. There is severe anti-German and anti-Italian hysteria, just like there was in World War I. But the problem here is, like the example that I always use is, if you were to line up a person of Japanese descent, a German descent, Italian descent, you would be able to easily pick out the one of Japanese descent. German and Italian, you wouldn't necessarily know right off the bat. There were approximately 11,000 people interned at Ellis Island during World War II. These were mainly Italian people. There were some camps, but again, nowhere near the scale of the Japanese American internment. Most often, Italian Americans were placed under surveillance of some sort, one of them being Joe DiMaggio's father. He had some property taken from him as well. So, Executive Order 9066, this is the actual relocation order. FDR signs this in 1942, early February 1942, again, very shortly, a little over 2 months after the bombing of Pearl Harbor. What this is going to do is allow the U.S. Army to designate certain areas which people can be excluded, and mainly this is going to be the west coast of the United States. There's going to be quite a few camps up and down the west coast, but nothing right on the actual coast. You have Manzanar, they're much more inland. And the way that FDR and the rest of the government is going to justify this is it was necessary to national security. They're going to intern over 100,000 Japanese Americans. So let's talk about the process. There's approximately 120,000 people of Japanese descent that are living in the United States at this point. Now, Japanese Americans, you have two kinds. You have those people that have immigrated from Japan that can't become a naturalized citizen yet, again, not until about 1952. And you also have those people who were born to those people that were Japanese immigrants, who are actual American citizens, okay? Japanese assets are frozen, so there's no way that they could even move out of the area. They are forced to sell their homes, their belongings, and their businesses, and they're not going to get top dollar or market value for this. And just to be specific, internment is the forced imprisonment and relocation. So internment camp sounds better than a prison camp, or relocation center as they like to call them. So, Japanese internment. Here's one of the actual orders. Western Defense Command and 4th Army, Wartime Civil Control Administration. This is May 3rd, 1942. This is just a few weeks following the executive order. Instructions to all persons of Japanese ancestry. Notice they don't have anywhere on here that says American citizen. Now, this could be not just those people that had immigrated from Japan, but also their children. Okay, so a little bit down here it says give advice, interactions on the evacuation, provide services with respect for. The following instructions must be observed: bedding and linens, no mattresses for each member of the family. These are all the things that they have to bring. Okay, and they had to all congregate at the Japanese Union Church. There you can see the center of the picture, 120 North San Pedro Street in Los Angeles. We'll see a picture of this in a little bit here. Here is an evacuation sale. Furniture, all items must be sold. Again, they're not going to get top dollar for this. There's going to be a lot of pictures here coming up. You can see this sign here, Japs keep moving. Again, Japs was a very acceptable term to be using for people of Japanese descent at this time. This is a white man's neighborhood. You can see on the left-hand side there, Japs keep out, you're not wanted. Here's another one, we don't want any Japs back here ever. Here are a bunch more pictures at the train station, basically waiting to be sent off. They don't know where they're going to be sent. They don't know which relocation center, if you want to call it that, they're going to be sent to. So they just have to pack anything and everything that they have that they could fit in their suitcases. Here is a terminal island. This is going through here and making sure that all these people had moved out of their neighborhoods. A lot of people at this point had very large antennas on top of their houses, but because especially in Terminal Island was a fishing neighborhood, so they would want to communicate with their husbands who were out fishing at the time, not to get all the way back to the emperor, but a lot of it got misconstrued, a lot of it out of fear. Here's a picture right here. This is in San Pedro. You can see this is at the one of those waiting for the bus to take them out to the Arcadia area. Here are the main relocation centers in 1942. Tule Lake, Manzanar, the ones here in California. You have one in Idaho. You have Heart Mountain in Wyoming, Topaz in Utah, Granada in Colorado, Poston and Gila River in Arizona, and then all the way over in Arkansas, Aurora and Jerome. This is where Ted Tanaway's family got sent. From, again, Ted Tanaway, graduate of Torrance High School, his family got sent all the way to Arkansas while he enlisted in the military. So the War Relocation Authority Centers. It doesn't sound so bad when you call it a relocation center, but the main ones here are Gila River, Heart Mountain, Manzanar, and then Poston in Arizona, and then Tule Lake up in Northern California. These people wouldn't be told which ones they were going to, so they really had no way to prepare. Very different climate from Manzanar to, say, one in way up north, Tule Lake, or even one that was in Idaho. So life in the camps. Here's a picture of the Manzanar War Relocation Center kind of front. It doesn't look so bad. It sounds good, but really it's not. This one right here, you can see the dirt roads. You can see the mountains in the background. They have barbed wire on one side, mountains in the background. They really have nowhere to go. The barracks that were very hastily built there on the left-hand side, and no paved roads. When it rained, when it snowed, whatever, it became very difficult to have any vehicles pass through this area. This is basically what these people would be living on. Their clothes would be on clotheslines atop their bed, and they'd be given a basic army cot. And you can see in this picture, if it does rain, what you're going to be left with. Very muddy conditions, very hard to get through and get to anything that you need to at the camp. Again, here's another picture of in the snow. Again, you could have someone that living out here in Southern California be sent to Idaho and would have no way to deal with the cold, harsh winters there, considering our harsh winters are 40 degrees, not negative 40 degrees. In this picture here, you can see the sheet in the background. That's pretty much dividing the living spaces between families. It was definitely not something that was local great amenities. You could hear anything and everything going on from side to side. This is out at Manzanar. This is before the hospital area got built. You can see these people out here in the cot and the porta potties that are right behind this. Definitely not exact or very good living conditions. Disease started to spread very quickly in this type of situation. And with the food, they would line up very much like cafeteria style. The problem is they would not get the type of nutrition that they were accustomed to. They would get jellies and that sort of thing on their rice, which was completely foreign to them. It was a really bad situation. Most of the time, they would be eating in situations like this and try and keep the families together as best possible, but not all the time were they able to eat together. They did go to school, very much in the style of a one-room schoolhouse, though, where you have basically kindergarten through about 6th grade, where they would all be working together trying to complete assignments. Now, here's the positive spin. You can see here there's baseball going on there. Once these people got settled in Manzanar and other relocation centers, these magazines would come out and do stories on the life in these places. You can see here, on the other hand, there's these kids with their hands on the barbed wire as acting as fence. Now, could they go through that? Sure, but what are they going to go through too? It's just a bunch of desert on the other side. Now, the positive spin, like I was saying, Manzanar Japanese get into groove of living, romance, games, and work. And basically, you can see here, they talk about a camp paper, the Manzanar Free Crest. They have a police force. They also talk about having a post office. It sounds great, but really, they're basically in prison. There's nothing really positive that's going on there. Now, the effects of it, no charges were ever filed. No evidence was ever found. 1944, Fred Korematsu basically takes the takes to the courts to try to get his freedom. He tried to claim that he was Chinese so he wouldn't be sent to one of these relocation centers. Basically, he ends up losing this. The Japanese American Citizens League in the 1980s, they want war reparations. They want an admission from the government that they were wrong, but it really doesn't happen. Congress does authorize in 1988 $38 million for lost property, but it only equates out to be about $20,000 per person that was interned, which is nowhere near what these people lost in 1942 when they had to be forcibly moved. Here's a picture of Bill Clinton and Fred Korematsu. Here's another picture right here. Korematsu was convicted for evading internment. He did claim that it violated his 14th Amendment right. He did side with the government, but you can see here he was given the Medal of Freedom by President Clinton. So I'll recap, again, try to keep it quick here today. You should be able to understand and describe how and why Japanese Americans were relocated and their impact it had on their lives. Forcibly had to sell everything. They had to be relocated to these war centers, which was basically a step above a Nazi concentration camp, to be honest. Poor nutrition. They were about 45 cents per meal per day per person, so they really were not getting the proper nutrition or proper living conditions that they were accustomed to. So if you have any questions, let me know. Send me an email. I will see you next time. I'm out.